Louisville goes for the season sweep over Pittsburgh on Saturday.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Friday edition of the Locked On the Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the University of Louisville, third year hosting this show, and I want to take the time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Louisville will host Pittsburgh on Saturday night at the KFC Center, 6 o'clock. Tip-off. Cardinals going for the season sweep over the Panthers and their seventh straight victory. We'll preview this matchup. We'll look back to the first matchup, discuss the differences between the two squad now, and much more. We'll also give a weekly update on where Louisville sits in the Bracketology projections. You know, it feels like January and February have gone by slow, but now that I think about it, March is tomorrow, or could be technically today when you're listening to this, but despite how slow it feels like it's gone, well, we're just now getting into March, the home stretch of the regular season for the Louisville Cardinals. 3 more games remaining, all at the Yum Center. The next one coming up is against the Pittsburgh Panthers. Now, the Cardinals have already completed 2 season sweeps of the 3 possible this season. They swept the Virginia Cavaliers 2 double-digit victories. They won the home and away against the Florida State Seminoles, and now they have an opportunity to complete the 3rd season sweep of the year against the Pittsburgh Panthers. The Cardinals defeated the Panthers back on January 11th, 82-78 up in Pittsburgh. And I got to be honest, when the Cardinals won that game, I was thinking to myself, this could end up being one of the best victories on the season, because I felt like that, coming into the game, the Panthers were 12-3. They handled business despite not having that quality victory. The 3 losses were against the best teams that they had played up until that point. But I believed in the squad. I thought that they had a really good team. Now, Jeff Capel, in his 7th season, was being expected to finally get over that hump. And when they got to 12-3, I was thinking, look, he's turned it around. What I didn't realize at the time, however, was that things were turned around in the completely opposite direction in which the Panthers wanted. When Pittsburgh dropped that game to Louisville and moved to 12-4 on the season, they ended up just completely falling off in the ACC. Since 12-4, the Panthers have gone 4-8 in their last 12 games. They are now 16-12 on the season. They are right in the middle of the pack in conference play. They are 7-10. Net ranking isn't terrible for the Panthers. We'll discuss more on that in the next segment. But it's been a really tough go for the Panthers. 2 teams that have gone on absolutely 100% different trajectories. Louisville has only lost 1 game since late December. That was to Georgia Tech on the first game of February. Pittsburgh, on the other hand, you look post-Louisville, they lost to Florida State and Clemson in back-to-back games. They had a 2-game winning streak, Syracuse and North Carolina. Then they lost 4 straight at Wake Forest, versus Virginia, at North Carolina, at SMU. They beat Miami and Syracuse, and now they come into this game on a 2-game losing streak at Notre Dame versus Georgia Tech. And it feels like there's no in between. the Panthers either keep games close or they just get blown out. Just completely blown out. Like it's either a less than 6-point game or they're getting beat by upwards of 17 to 20 points. And there are many different reasons as to why this is, but and more on that coming up in the next segment. But Jeff Capel could very well be on the hot seat. Now, that really depends on who you ask, because there's a whole conversation as to whether or not Pittsburgh has the money to move off of Capel or Pat Narduzzi or both, because they both have decently sized buyouts with multiple years left on their respective contracts. But you look back at that game on January 11th and why Louisville was able to come out victorious. And it was a matter of good three-point shooting across the board. Louisville shot 37% from three. They made 13 of them. Pittsburgh, 47.6. Damian Dunn hit 3 threes. Ishmael Leggett had 4 threes. Both teams shot the ball pretty decently well. They didn't turn it over too awful much. Louisville had 11. Pittsburgh had 9. One of the main things that jumps off the page to me is that Jalen Lowe had 13 free throws. The Cardinals as a team only had 15. Lowe shot almost as many as the Cardinals did. And some of these fouls felt like anticipation fouls where the whistle got blew really before the contact. The whistle got blown before the contact was even there. The referee basically anticipated the foul calls, and a lot of that came in the second half. Rain Smith had a fantastic game, 25.7 of 11 from three, and a couple of those down the stretch, big-time three-point shots. Hepburn, Edwards, Hadley, all in double figures. James Scott had 8 points, 9 boards. Louisville didn't really get much from their supporting cast. This was still when Abubakar Traore was getting more acclimated in the rotation. And it's hard to use this game as a guideline to discuss what Louisville needs to do on March 1st, because we're talking about two completely different teams at this point in the season. Like Louisville, despite not having the greatest month of February at times, they still are 6-1 in their last 7 games. They're on a 6-game winning streak. They're going for win number 7. They're going for the season sweep. But Pittsburgh has just not been good. And more on this here in a second. There is no Damian Dunn on the team anymore. He sustained an injury early in the month of February that would sideline him for the remainder of the season. That's huge because he had a great game against the Cardinals the first time around. At the moment, Pittsburgh not really playing with that deep of a rotation. 7 guys played against Notre Dame. 7 guys played against Georgia Tech. So Pittsburgh, like Louisville, having some depth issues. It seems like Capel doesn't trust the majority of his bench. Only 2 players appearing off the bench. And it's just been a rough go for the Panthers. And for a bunch of different reasons. Like you look at the overall statistics for this Pittsburgh team and where they rank nationally, a lot of those aren't going to alarm you. But it's becoming increasingly clear that the first half of the season skewed those numbers. Because when I tell you what some of those numbers are now, after February, it's going to shock you. Of course, this Panthers team has the talent in the backcourt to make this game interesting because they played Louisville pretty tough during the first matchup. Ishmael Leggett and Jalen Lowe is still a quality backcourt. Both of those players averaging over 16 points a game. Now, The field goal percentage hasn't been the greatest, especially for Jalen Lowe, shooting 38% from the field, Leggett 46%, but that number has gone down over the course of February. Lowe shooting 27% from three, Leggett 35%-ish from three. The three-point number is a little skewed too. So the statistics don't really tell the tale fully with this Panthers team. Quality squad that, yes, you look at the results and not really great, 16-12. It's sort of like NC State in a way, because more often than not, when they lose, it's really close. And there's a reason for this. And we'll talk about why Florida State, why Florida State, my apologies. I'm sitting there looking at some statistics from Louisville, Florida State. Why Pittsburgh just hasn't been that good in the month of February, what Louisville needs to do in this contest to get that season sweep and 7 straight victory, coming up on this Friday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Everything really points to life moving fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You could be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. You can get $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day, so protecting your loved ones doesn't have to break the bank. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meet, MEET, fabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Cardinal fans, want to take the time again to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. March is here. Obviously, a ton of basketball talk, ACC tournament talk, NCAA tournament talk. Man, it has been a while. What's funny is that the Cardinals haven't made the tournament since I started the show, so this will be the first time talking about the NCAA tournament for the Louisville Cardinals. I'm really excited about that. We'll have some spring football coverage as well this month, so appreciate you all sticking with us and making us your first listen through January and February, and hope you will for March as well. The Pittsburgh Panthers on a bad skid through ACC play, 4-8 in their last 12 games, 16-12 overall. Their net ranking hasn't taken a huge hit. Like, they are still in the top 60, currently at number 58. So at the moment, that win over Pittsburgh on the road technically still is a quad 1 win for the Cardinals. Now, this is a quad 2 opportunity for the Cardinals, quad 1 for Pittsburgh, because the Cardinals are playing the Panthers at home. You break it down by quadrant opportunities. The Panthers are a whopping 1-8 in quad 1 games, 3-2 in quad 2, 6-2 in quad 3, and a perfect 6-0 in quad 4. The players to watch in this matchup are the same players to watch from January 11th. Jalen Lowe and Ishmael Leggett are the two players that Louisville needs to slow down in the backcourt, both averaging over 16 points a game. No Damian Dunn in this game, which is huge considering that he had 15 points in the game against the Cardinals, 8 rebounds and 3 assists. So no Dunn in this matchup. Pittsburgh's rotation is shorter, but there's a couple reasons that you can point to as to why Pittsburgh has not been good since the month of January, even going through the month of January, but since February started. Pittsburgh has a really bad three-point defense. Overall, 279th in the country. It's 35.1%. 161st in scoring defense. 71.2 points per game allowed to their opponents. And we talked about how these numbers are a little skewed because of how good they were to start the year. Now, since February rolled around, Pittsburgh is allowing the inside the top 20 highest in effective field goal percentage to their opponents. Teams are scoring really efficiently against the Panthers. Their three-point defense, they're allowing teams to shoot 41% from three-point land. That's insane. That's really, really, really bad. They are 248th in the country in best effective field goal percentage. So I mean, they're scoring a decent amount of points. You look at their offensive numbers over the season, 77 points per game. But lately, not great shot selection. If you ask a Pittsburgh fan, what's sort of the reasoning behind this bad stretch? They'll tell you three-point shooting defense. They'll tell you defense in general. But they'll also tell you late-game clutch scoring. The Panthers have gone on multiple scoring droughts at the end of games. A lot of that is because of bad shot selection. Their leading scorer, Jalen Lowe, 38% from the field, 27% from three. He's got 16.7 points a game, but on really bad efficiency. Those are really bad shooting numbers. Leggett might be shooting 46% from the field, but it's gotten a little bit worse over the course of the past month. 34.5% from three, which isn't terrible. Zach Austin, 43.5% from the field, 39% from three. Not bad. But when a lot of their offense is coming from two players and their leading scorer is sub 40% from the field and sub 30% from three, leaves a lot to be desired. So, everything combined together has led to Pittsburgh not being good over the past, let's call it, month and a half. What are the keys for victory here for Pat Kelsey's team? I'm trying to draw some observations from the January 11th game and apply them to this game. But I look at the recent statistics from Pittsburgh, and I think that one of the first things, and this is really obvious, but the Cardinals didn't do it well against Virginia Tech, and they've had some struggles in the past of making open three-point shots. Pittsburgh is allowing 41% to their opponents from behind the arc. Louisville needs to make the Panthers pay. If this is a situation where Louisville scores a ton of points, I think that they're better in a high-scoring game than a low-scoring game because it plays into somewhat of Pittsburgh's strengths. If you score a lot of points, Pittsburgh is going to have to efficiently match that, and judging by the way that they played recently, I'm not sure that they can. Now, again, I will point out that this Pittsburgh team, despite being 16-12, has the talent to put together a really good performance on the court and shock you. As of about 5 o'clock on Friday, I don't have a current spread from what I see. Louisville is going to be favored decently in this game, but I don't have a current spread at the moment. So it's making it hard to really utilize any type of, any type of guideline there. But I would imagine that it's a pretty decent spread. Let's see. I'm looking over to OddsShark, and it's not showing me a spread there. Right now, Pittsburgh is 3-9-1 against the spread in the last 13 games. Louisville's 12-6 in their last 18 games against the spread. So I mean, just kind of looking at this, I don't see anything yet, but I wish they would come out with spreads sooner, but then again, I get it. So, Sportsbook Wire has Louisville projected at a 10-point victory, which I would imagine that the spread is probably just under 10 points, maybe. So, oh well. I like Louisville in this game. I think that these two teams are playing drastically different. I think that making open three-point shots is key, keeping Pittsburgh off the free throw line and making them be efficient from the field is another thing. And Pittsburgh shoots the ball decently from three, over 35%. And the Cardinals have had issues defending open three-point shots. So it's all surrounding the three-point line. If Louisville makes open shots at a decent, serviceable clip, and they defend the three-point line pretty well, I like the Cardinals in this game. So Cardinals going for their 7th straight win, a season sweep over the Pittsburgh Panthers, but also, more importantly, to continue to try to bolster their tournament seeding. Where do the Cardinals currently sit in bracketology projections? We'll explain when we come back on this Friday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. March basketball is here. There's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, easy, and keeps every game exciting. When you win, your money hits your account in as little as 15 minutes, so there's no waiting around. And if you're one of those Taco Tuesday fans, well, PrizePicks even offers weekly promos like Taco Tuesday, where you get discounted player projections for even more value. So download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's the code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. This is the last segment of the month of February. It's actually, like I said, it's actually wild because it feels like the past 2 months have gone by slow, but basically we blinked and it's now March. The Cardinals currently sitting right at 26th in the net rankings. As of yesterday, they have fluctuated back and forth, hovering around number 25. I wouldn't expect that to change much over the course of the last 3 games unless the Cardinals lose. And that's why we say that, yes, a season sweep is great. Yes, 7 straight wins is great. But ultimately, only thing that matters to me is the net ranking. Where does Louisville currently sit in the most up-to-date bracketology projections? Well, 2 new ones as of Friday. We look to Joe Lunardi at ESPN. He has the Cardinals once again as a 7 seed. The only difference is out in the West Regional. I don't know what it is about predicting Louisville to go play in Cleveland, but the Cardinals have been, put there in the most recent projections, and to go a little bit further, continually playing West Virginia. And I don't know how accurate this is going to be because West Virginia feels like they're getting very, very close to that bubble if they're not already on it. But a Louisville-West Virginia rematch for the 7-10 in Cleveland. I like the Cardinals' chances there because the Mountaineers haven't been playing that great. There is no Tucker DeVries in this game. You would play the winner of the 2, the 15. 15 is Central Connecticut. The number 2 are the Gators of Florida. I think that would be a challenging 2 seed for the Cardinals to play. Walter Clayton Jr. and a Todd Golden-led team that scores a lot of points. They shoot the ball well from 3. Defense is sort of hit or miss for the Gators, but when you have that good of an offense, one that defeated Auburn on the road just a couple weeks ago, that's a tough 2 seed to draw. There's a couple teams that I would really like for Louisville not to play. And you look at the 2 seeds, Iowa State, Tennessee, Michigan State, and Florida. That would arguably be the toughest 2 seed. And based upon where they sit in the rankings, that probably would be the highest ranked 2 seed. So would be a tough round of 32 matchup for the Cardinals, assuming that they would get there. But hey, you get there. So that's just the main thing about it. Jerry Palm from CBS Sports released his recent bracketology update on Friday as well. And he has the Cardinals as a 6 seed in the South Regional. Auburn, the 1 seed, the 6-11 would be against VCU. VCU currently the 29th team in the net. They're 23-5. They've only played 2 quad 1 games. They're 1-1 against Dayton with a win and a loss against New Mexico. 6-3 in quad 2, 3-0 quad 3, 12-1 in quad 4. A team in the top 30 getting an 11 seed would be a tough 6-11 matchup there, but I do like the Cardinals in that matchup, and ultimately I would love for Louisville to get that 6 seed because you would escape a 2 seed, and I think that the 3 seeds are really vulnerable. The 3 seeds being St. John's, Texas A&M, Kentucky, and Michigan. And well, there was a mailbag question about this last week, or I'm sorry, actually this week, about playing Arkansas or Kentucky. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this, who Jerry Palm has Louisville slated to play in Providence, the 14 seed being James Madison, the 3 seed being the Kentucky Wildcats. You could really see it happening to where if Louisville's that 6 seed, if there was a prop bet on FanDuel that you could say either St. John's or Kentucky would be the 3 seed, I would put a lot of money on that, because as much as I don't think things are rigged, I think that matchups are clearly set with TV ratings involved. If you don't believe me, go back to the 2014 NCAA tournament field and go look at Louisville's side of the bracket and tell me that things aren't really thought about beforehand. I would like to see Louisville play Kentucky again. I do. I think you're talking about 2 drastically different teams. Now, Kentucky still is a good squad. They lose some questionable games, but they also can compete with anyone. They've had some injury issues. With a full healthy squad, they're tough to beat, but I think Louisville's much better than the team that the Wildcats played in the middle part of December. So that would be a pretty interesting round of 32 matchup. I think that if you asked me which 3 seed I would want to play, to me, this is a tough one, but honestly, probably Michigan, because the Wolverines have won a ton of games recently, but they're close wins. So how long does that streak last? I think that the Cardinals would match up decently well with Michigan. Michigan does have some better big men than other teams. A&M would also be an interesting matchup for the Cardinals. But like I said, you win your next 3 games on the schedule. I think that you're going to get up to a 6 seed at the lowest, potentially a 5, depending on what happens across the country. If you beat Pittsburgh, I'm not sure how much it changes. I'm not sure Lunardi moves Louisville off the 7. I think that Palm keeps Louisville at the 6, but not much to gain, but a whole lot to lose, because you lose to Pittsburgh. I know it's quad 2. Georgia Tech was quad 2. You're going to drop down a couple of seating spots, whether that's fair or not. That's just a reality. So when we come back in March, we're going to give you the recap against Pittsburgh, hopefully for a season sweep and a 7th consecutive victory. That's going to wrap up the final episode of February. Everyone have a great day. Have a great weekend. Be sure to get to the Center this weekend and go Cards.